Okay. Okay. So let's start. Thank you. Swap. Better. Yeah. Then the eyeball. Okay. I know it's a bunch, I don't know. It's a prescription. It's a bunch. It's show. It's prescription. I don't know. Okay. So, well, we are. Okay. Actually, okay. We are. We've made progress on can activate. So the can activate now will first check to see if the users are printed. If they're not, it will return false straight away. That stops that problem. We'll then fetch the profile, and if they don't have a subscription and the current URL is not setting subscription, we'll redirect to setting subscription. Um, return the redirect. Otherwise, return true. So if they're authenticated, the URL is not that, and you have it. Actually, Dan, how you doing? So basically, if we go into the application, morning, yeah, it's like all these things. Might check the video and sounds fine there. 1 second. I'll do it again. What's this? Okay, how does that sound? That sounds really muffled, doesn't it? It's definitely not right, but okay. How does that sound now? That's a really great. That doesn't. No, it does sound like they're on my phone, correct? Oh, doesn't. Yep, I think trying to figure out the issue. I'll do wrong stuff in reverse. I've not changed anything. Everything looks fine. But it's too muffled. What else do I look at? Is the system I phone or something weird? No, the Stream Deck hasn't changed. I've finished. Um, I just I've unplugged the Stream Deck. I've unplugged the microphone. I've restarted everything that I can. I installed new wavelength software yesterday, but that was Discord. The Discord with you. You're on the same side. Um, there have been a lot of technical parts that me hasn't. My favorite one was when I told people to start flashing lights. You never know if I could turn the light off, it was still on. But, uh, so that's our wavelength software has different days, but I wonder if that changed anything. It's not anything. Well, how does that sound now? No, I'm saying you back to think of everything. I hate stream issues. This is annoying. Whoa. Well, anything other than so yeah, there's something wrong with hmm, Shigami, there is a Discord link in the tab below. And if you wanted to share some diagrams or discussion about Kafka, I can do. I'm listening to myself to try and see if I can figure this out. There should be this page now. I'll just put them in there. You know. There is one link to the cards below. Microphone issues there from big enough, so I can fix this first. So I can bring that up. My confidence, thing that it's fixed. It sounds muffled. Okay, let's try and move it away from the mouth a bit more. It doesn't sound good, doesn't it? Yeah, so Shigami, if you would like, um, just if you have any questions about the Kafka usage, etc., you're more than welcome to jump into Discord and ask. Um, I'm not getting this mic fix, whatever I do here. So um, basically, I use Kafka as a state transfer for all the data throughout the system. So as I add entities into the system, they get published to Kafka. Other pieces pick them up and process them. Things like changes, notifications, watch for changes. Um, they consume the data so that they can get their current state. So things like the view. The view is built from consuming the events in Kafka. So I'm not using Kafka as a service bus. I'm not using it to say an item was added or task was updated or task completed, etc. I'm literally publishing task, and everybody else has to figure out what they need from that piece of data. If I need to tell the system that a task was completed because there's things that need to happen in response to tasks. So let's say when a task is completed, I need a notification to be sent, right? Then I might publish a task completed using ServiceBus, a notification to pick that up and process it. If that was ever needed as an explicit event that couldn't be implied from the state of the data itself. So it's termed as event state transfer or event-based state transfer. Let me try and do I try and monitor the sound in the clear and see if it sounds muffled. Yes, it sounds muffled to me. It's not a stream off that. I apologize for none of this. Okay, does that sound any better? Doesn't sound any better because it's not. What? Yes, but quieter. How does it sound on stream though? So the quieter we can deal with. Why can I not hear it now though? Is it better though? Has it gone clear? Much better? Okay. That suggests I need a PC reboot. The funny thing is I can't hear it. Even if I've got the stream. Let's have a look. Let's see. Reset that. Have I gone deaf? Oh, I know why. I know why. Input device, output device. There we go. That's why. Okay. No, I still can't hear anything. Whatever. If you guys say it's fine, then we're going with this, right? Okay. Okay. I plugged in a HyperX microphone I have on the side as a spare, a USB one. So basically, after stream, I'll just restart the machine and then test the audio that way. It's always my fallback. Okay, so yeah, Shigami, you're more than welcome to ask any questions you want. You're more than welcome to dig in if you would like to know a little bit more. The Discord is a great place if you want to continue conversation around this. If you have specific questions or you would like some help with how to use it, there is a library I created that actually helps get some of the Kafka pieces a little easier to use. Doesn't solve all the problems. There's a few additions that I need to make to it to make it a little bit more robust, but it does help. So yeah, if there's any specific questions, please feel free. You know, as we proceed, you're more than welcome to. Okay, so yesterday I got um the switch map in there, and we were having the issue with the infinite loop, right? So now if I go here and navigate, right, everything's working fine. If I go to the database and I change this so that the subscription is no longer on this user, right, I believe it won't change immediately, right, because it's still the token is still valid. New experience, how does WebStorm compare to VS or VS Code? Hi, Tempest Future. Um, I'm a big fan of the JetBrains tools. For me, I like the consistency of the IDE experience. You know, I can be in Rider, I can be in WebStorm, I can be in PHP Storm, which I do also use. Um, and it's a consistent world. To be honest, recently I've started using Fleet from JetBrains in place of Visual Studio Code, and I love this. I think it's a much cleaner layout than Visual Studio Code. Um, So I think VS Code at this point just feels very cluttered, um, uh, primarily because everyone's kind of figured out how to add into it. So I don't think it's quite the experience it once was. Um, but with tools like this, with the plugins and stuff, I just think it's. Um, but that being said, if you want free, right, these aren't free tools, right? Um, the free license is good, but still, um, yeah. Why is this? This is not playing fair today, is it? Um, but does it have that cluttered feel? Yeah. Um, I mean, for me, it could be because the consistency of the layout of these two, right? I navigate here, I navigate here. I've got all the same tools. I'm using the same file. The TypeScript. This is slightly bigger because I don't know why it's slightly bigger than that. It should be 21, right? Um, where was that at? Um, but there's a consistency to it, right? And I like that. Visual Studio Code. I do use it at work, and if you're looking for free, um, if you're looking for free and you're doing web dev, then you can't really go wrong with VS Code. I think it's a capable platform. You can do all sorts of different development in it, um, and they've added a lot to it over the years. Um, that being said, I'm not using free tools, so I'm happy to use these. Okay, so this won't pick up that broken uh, um, I've removed the subscription for this user, right? It won't pick it up because the GraphQL caches the call. Ultimately, I do want to figure out the right patterns for messaging down to the client to say, okay, things have changed. Do what you need to do. So I would push a message to this client and say, invalidate the template, right? Invalidate the profile. So if I refresh, what you'll see is he says, I'll get to here with subscription works. Now I can navigate these other pieces, which is a little bit concerning, although these would also be locked behind permissions. But now I can't navigate out. Every time I try to navigate to somewhere else, I get navigated into the subscription piece. So let's just go to here so it at least looks correct. Um, feature, no, this is still in modules. I need to move it. Settings, views, the iBar thing is driving me crazy. So subscription is there. Home, home. Here we go. So label, subscription, icon, pie. What does subscription icon look like? IMG. Icons, icons. Prime icons, list. What do we want for a subscription? Money? A dollar sign? $1. Could have guessed that one. Route is subscription. So go here now. Subscription what? So eventually what we'll do is we'll put the information for the user subscription in here. Yeah. I definitely like Vim/JetBrains products over VS Code. If you're not using the shortcuts for either, though, I'd probably go with VS Code. Yeah, I suppose the shortcuts do come into the flow as well. I didn't really consider that then. You know, uh, picking up a new IDE is always possible, but you just get comfortable with a set of tools. Lot lighter and more plugins easy to install. But I think the VS Code becomes very cluttered when you do add plugins in. The way it's laid out, etc. I think VS Code is a bit of a mess in that respect. And maybe I just haven't seen a power user in VS Code to compare to, but um, yeah. But like, I've got a few plugins on my VS Code in this machine. I know that, right? So you end up with like if I've got Docker, right? The plugins, um, right? This nav bar down the left is pretty much your only navigation of these things, unless you start to get used to, um, yeah. So it's not. I was actually using this because I was trying to write some playwright tests the other day, and the plugin only supports this. The I was looking for. Where are you? Where are you? No, where have you gone? Testing. So testing in general is this big thing, but um, yeah, I could only do. Oh no, I can't do record apparently. Apparently that's bugged out now. Um, yeah, that was there the other day. I could record. So I just find it not very easy to navigate. It gets very cluttered. It can be all things, but when it becomes all things, you end up with a lot more in there than you really want. And yeah, so in here, this is my. I actually broke out earlier on because early on in the project because I found that the Angular support, etc. Let me just stop this. It's driving me crazy. The Angular support in WebStorm was just a little bit cleaner, and the CSS stuff was a bit cleaner in WebStorm than it was in Rider. Rider you can do everything in Rider for the most part, but it's just WebStorm's built for building websites, and Rider's built for C#. So yeah, we are. Well, it's better. Thank you. Um, I enjoy using the tools separately. I don't mind having multiple windows open. And another thing to consider is I also have a pretty high spec system at this point. There's a lot of memory available. There's a lot of CPU resource available. So I'm not worried about having multiple IDEs open. If I had to worry about that, then maybe I would consider it slightly different. So again, no matter which way I go, hopefully that one will work. Oh, because I'm logged in. Interesting. Yeah. So that's not really a problem. But I can't click on these other tabs. I can't navigate to them. It just will not. It doesn't flicker. It doesn't flash. It just goes. I can see these other things because the route guard. And now that is because the route guard is only at the top level, right? So I have the route guard here at settings. If I wanted to protect those other things, I could put the route guards on here. And now I wouldn't be able to navigate anywhere else, right? Um, but I think for now I'm going to leave it active. So I could do can activate on here, right? Just the same. So there we go. So we've got the basic premise of subscriptions in there. If we move that back, right? Um, go back here, refresh. We now have access to the application again, right? So everything's working. So the presence of this subscription is enough to dictate whether you are allowed in this system. So the only other piece we've got to kind of resolve there is the delete scenario, and then we can move to the users on tasks. It does look a little better. I still want to find. So what I'm looking for is I would like to find someone who is either very good at UI UX design and is able to do Figma designs that I can implement, or someone who is good on the client side um, with an eye for that and is looking for that experience. I think at this point, it's the only way I'm going to move that UI forward without significant time spent on that layout. And yeah, so we have the view, and the view has a receiver for tenant subscription. And right now, it has the receive async. What we can also do is we can override delete async, right? So there is a concept in Kafka. If you send, and this is documented by Confluent themselves, if you send an empty body, an empty message body with um, the key of the object you're talking about, right? So the key, then it will be a delete, right? So my framework is modified to accept that, so I can implement just delete async, and now it'll understand what a delete looks like, so I can actually send the delete. So we're going to implement the delete there. That's something I always struggle with. I can copy design exactly, but my design skills are definitely lacking. Yes, yeah. This current design is a combination of Mojo spending some time with Claude AI to try and get some general layout plus a little bit of tweaking and yeah. Yeah, design is its own skill set. I built up some design skills building my blog, but they are still far from a real design skill. Yeah, it's time. It's pure time. We can learn a lot of things, but we don't have enough time to learn everything, and that's what makes us a great team understands the benefit, the strengths and weaknesses of each other, and builds around that. And I miss that. Right? You can't be all things effectively. Right? It's just there's not enough time. Um, yeah, so what we need to do is in our application here, integration, we're going to have a delete and a subscription. Right now, it's published as a subscription integration event, right? But that it is a tenant subscription, which is fine. So Mojo has created that. I'll go into this in a second. So if we look at the diagram, if we actually go over here, you see there's another side to the diagram now, right? So the backend piece, the control tower piece, is a completely separate application built in Next.js using a similar pattern with its own GraphQL API, its own pieces, and it has a subscriptions component to it. When I register a new tenant, it creates a subscription and publishes a subscription, which I then put together here, and now I have a valid subscription, right? Mojo has been building the UI out on this, and it can it looks something like this, right? Um, and you can delete a subscription from within here and mark the tenant inactive. So sneak peek. So control tower is coming along, and deleting the subscription will trigger the event, and this will remove this. So I can build all of this without even running this, right? Because I can mock the messages up that are interacting between the two systems. When we do things like activate subscription, etc., the likelihood is we won't use Kafka for that. We'll use a ServiceBus command because there's actually a need for that. I don't want to create direct API links between these two systems. I think that would be messy. So a command-based system will disconnect them enough. We can mock the behaviors there. So for that, right now, though, I am going to basically mimic this behavior. Let's go to a test, view application, setting integration. When deleting, how about structure these? Yeah. When deleting tenant subscription. So subscriptions are a really thin concept to this point, right? They're just this record that associates a tenant with a subscription identifier. And the real reason for that is just so that we have that modeled out, that we have the concept of a subscription in the system, and we can start to build around that. Whether we make it per user, whether we can experiment with whether we assign users to a subscription, provide different features in a subscription. So you might end up with, oh, I want the Liquid Sky, but I want 5 planning subscriptions, but 10 um, uh, dev subscriptions, and 1 or 2 of the devs will share one of the subscriptions, etc. I don't know. So we can talk about that and flex that, but the structure of providing the information for the subscription, providing the actual subscription data is and the mechanism there is what we need. So we can talk about the rest later. Hello, good morning. Let's give a sneak peek of Control Tower. When subscription does not exist, that no action is taken. That's a terrible test, but it's fine. Because we're going to write when subscription exists. So if we receive a delete, really what I'm doing there is making sure that if we receive a delete, we don't do anything else, right? We don't accidentally run a delete on a tenant. It has to be for that tenant. So I'm validating that. Don't call delete on something else. So when dealing with messaging, you don't know that you won't receive the same message again. So you should always assume that you could receive the same message or you could receive an older message. So it's worth validating that. Fact, subscription is removed. Right. So this is a really simple one. It's nothing advanced. Yeah. So we'll write this one first. Private iRepository tenant subscription repository private delete tenant subscription dot handler is our subject. We haven't created it yet, so that's good. Public read only GUID, raw read only GUID tenant identifier gets that equals GUID. So yeah, if you are new to the stream, please feel free. If you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, if you think that what I'm doing is wrong, that's also perfectly acceptable to talk about. I would love to hear different opinions and thoughts on this sort of design. There's a lot to take in, so you know, I'm not expecting everyone has seen or understands everything, but you're more than welcome to ask as I go through stuff, and do not worry about diverting me if you are genuinely interested in asking questions. Let's make this an arrange act. That's a base class for testing that implements two methods, arrange and act, and they just are called before and after every test, so that before every test, sorry, so that they can set up everything properly. So repository is a substitute for iRepository of tenant subscription, and subject is a new delete tenant subscription handler, and we're going to end up saying subject dot handle new delete tenant subscription dot command with tenant identifier and subscription identifier. Right. That's what we're going to end up sending. Get a waiter, get a result. Right. And we're going to validate that repository did not receive delete any tenant subscription. And so we just want to validate this case. If you are paying attention, you will realize that once I do this, that there's no way it can actually succeed. So it's or it can't fail. Tenant identifier, GUID subscription identifier. I command. We don't need a result necessarily in these because we're using these from the I misspelled identifier again. This is being used from the other side of the application. This is being used from the receivers to the application. Every so if we're being a little bit more accurate here, there's a layer here, right? Receivers, which is essentially consumers, right? These receivers put data into the database and the view consumes that. So it's kind of part of the view. Actually, let me do this. Let's start to model this out a little bit better, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do components, new drawing. This is going to be view. So we're going to go back to overview, back here. So view. SQL server, right the second. Oh, group. So we have a SQL server. We have receivers, aka consumers. The reason they're referred to as receivers is because there is two different distributed messaging systems in play here. We have a ServiceBus with mass transit and Kafka and RabbitMQ, and then we have Kafka. Um, they're both useful for distributed messaging. I want to use the abilities of one for one purpose and one for another purpose. So if I want to send commands around the system, that is going to be mass transit RabbitMQ. If I know that I'm sending a command, even if I don't know who the receiver is necessarily, I'm going to use that because I do intend something specifically to be told for another system, such as send an email. That is a command. That is not a Kafka, hey, when you get around to it, just do this, right? Kafka I'm using for event state transfer so that I can just publish the data and pieces can pick it up and use it as they see fit. So to make sure I don't create any sort of blurry lines there, I kind of used the word receivers because I created a library abstraction around the Kafka consumer that I referred to as a receiver, right? Because it receives the event from the consumer, right? So if you see the word receivers when I'm talking about this, it's globally consistent at this point. Receivers are a wrapper around Kafka consumers, so therefore they are consumers, but events come in, right? So Kafka uh, event, right? Let's put that there. And we have GraphQL. I've never used project runs like that. I normally jump in and make the project up as I go and seeing how much this can benefit so you can visualize what is happening. Um, yeah, it is a. It's not always accurate, and sometimes it's basically just so I can kind of get my own thoughts in order around what I actually want to do. Um, I don't remember how to turn organizational lines on. Um, but yeah, it's so what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to draw more um, detailed instances of these things so that the um, I suppose it's technically infrastructure that writes to that. Well, that's interesting. I don't get the I can't attach to this object. I can only attach that ring or that ring. That's funny. right? So the application's reading in and the infrastructure's writing out, etc. So we're validating things. Um, it's not quite that way. But then the GraphQL is going to use this database, right? So the GraphQL API layer, right? So we'll go into more of that. I'm trying to describe the things that live in there overall. But the overview now, if I go here and go here, now I can do insert link to file. I can do view there. So now I can navigate to that from there. Okay. It's fine. We'll leave it like that. This diagram is a useful way for me to explain as I'm talking about things on stream specifically, and it's used a lot on my stream because it's the easiest way of showing the system at a large scale. If I'm sat in code all the time, it's very hard to align. Now, the code is consistent in its pattern, it's consistent in where things lie for the most part. I'm sure there are inconsistencies in there that's going to appear in every code base. But this is a way for me to point and kind of get an idea of the flow of the system as a whole. Um, if this was a monolith, that might be a little less necessary, purely because there's not that many moving parts potentially. But even in a modern monolith, you're still going to have services around the outside. You're still going to have pieces that run and need describing. But this also starts to expand upon the control tower piece, right? It starts to show this interaction with this backend component. So, and the reason control tower is listed separately is because it is a completely separate repository, a completely separate application, using Kafka to respond to the events and using Kafka to publish data. And eventually ServiceBus will cross this line as well. So ServiceBus is kind of our, interconnect, whether you refer to Kafka or whatever. Chandu, hello, how you doing? So it is a useful tool. So let's go back over here. We have our command. Are you using state management RSGS? I am using NGRX signal stores for state management on the client. I do not believe I am using them very effectively. Um, Sorry, one of the dogs just came in and decided to fluff up her bed. Okay. Public class handler. Don't need that yet. I command handler of command. Pretty much all we need right this second. We don't need anything more advanced. So if we go over to our test, this inscription does not exist. This now actually all builds. We can run that and validate that we get a failing test. Haven't implemented any code other than the stub. Actually run? No? Run unit tests. There we go. Failed. Failed for not implementing an exception. That's fine. So let's make it uh uh uh, task.from result. Can I do that? Oh, still got to get used to the idea of value task versus task. Yeah, so Chandu on the client side, I'm using NGRX Signal Store quite extensively. Um, I am using, I believe I am using them poorly. I reached out to another streamer who is way more advanced in these things. Excel Camille streams Tuesdays and Thursdays usually, I think. Um, he's a he's an Angular expert, but I am using the signal stores to disconnect the front end from the data layer and to store the state in there. Um, yeah, that's how I'm doing that. Okay, so no actions taken, right? Ah, our test passes now. Awesome. We passing test. So let's now make it uh, pass this test. Again, this is where TDD gets a little hard because I'm going to do some contrived stuff to make this do the right thing. So I want to do repository dot um, received. I'm glad you're nice and comfortable, dog, because that door being open makes me freezing. If I jump up to close the door, the dog will jump up and it will unsettle the dog, and we start all over again. So, um, delete async arg.is tenant subscription, and this should be subscription should have a tenant ID. Now, this is where this gets a little hard because this is not joined on. Yeah, yeah, I probably could do with that, right? Public read only int tenant ID equals 4930. Um, tenant ID and s dot subscription identifier equals subscription identifier. Like that, any cancellation token. Again, I use read only here. I know I can use const on a lot of these, but you can't use const on GUIDs, and it makes a really inconsistent read there. So there's just plain, it's a unit test. It's not going to end my program with insufficient memory. I'm perfectly fine there. So, um, let's do the arrange act piece and arrange. Oh, I know why. I know why it's not helping me. There you go. I have so Control Alt Shift O will disable Copilot. If I'm trying to write my own code, I don't want Copilot interfering, so I do turn it off. However, when I'm doing it this way, this is uh useful. So repository first to default is so this is an interesting one because I only have the subscription identifier. Do you do database tuning At this phase, no. I have learned some over my years of doing of working with databases to look at execution plans, looking into query plans, um, to identify slow queries, identify uh, indexes and optimizations. I have done some of that. I don't believe it's something that you necessarily need to consider early in a project. Part of the reason I'm designing this system the way I am is because I will be able to focus. So a lot of times when you're doing optimization stuff, if you're working in something in a monolith, right, it's oftentimes caused by you're inserting a lot of data, um, and you're then trying to turn around and query and join across all sorts of tables because you've not really built the data for the one purpose, you've built the data for every purpose. So you're kind of denormalizing or normalizing database schemas to try and adapt to everything in the application at once. One of the approaches I want to take with this, with the view, is right now the objects look very close to what they come out of the main system as. They just have replace indexes, etc. I replace the GUIDs with their ID alternatives because I build a schema, but I do have the potential to build tables that are purely a conglomeration of data. So I can get rid of some of those things. Um, Not that I won't have to tune it, but yeah, it's again another skill that is um, what I kind of try and pick up enough of when I need it. Uh, and yeah, but I am trying to minimize it by basically building the schema for the purpose it's intended for rather than building it for all purposes. This design does mean that these are just write. There's no foreign keys required. There's no joins required. They just write data for the most part. They don't have to check existence of things. They don't have to do anything else. If they have a reference to another piece of the system, it's a GUID and it just captures the GUID and doesn't matter because it's just going to publish it straight out. So that means these data tables are going to be fast with little optimization. Um, no, No, I haven't really tinkered with that concept. I'm not quite certain I understand what is meant by micro front end at this point. Um, you know, the whole BFF thing is a concept that is still something that I think I'm certain I know what people mean by it, and then I see someone else's definition. I'm like, do I really know? It's kind of like REST. Like, yeah. So to the point of a join, right? This tenant subscription has a tenant ID. If I do public virtual tenant, right? You're doing clean architecture for each call. Yes. Well, again, clean architecture. The It's following the general layout of clean architecture. It's following the general rules of clean architecture based upon what I can understand from other implementations. What I experienced when I went to look for good clean architecture examples so I could try and make sure that I was aligning because this application originally followed what I decided was understandable and clean, which wasn't a million miles away from this. The concept of domain I didn't want to put in there because I feel that brings about a different topic entirely. Um, but it has worked for me. So um, I looked at um, Steve Smith, Ardalis's clean architecture example. I looked at least three other people who say, "Hey, I'm an expert on clean architecture." I looked at three of theirs. They all differed. They all had differences in their naming. They had differences in some of the behaviors. They had differences in some where they thought they expected things to live. There was enough differences to make me realize that I just needed to kind of follow a general structure so people could understand it on stream, that it is kind of clean architecture, and it would create enough difference that people could debate it. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a navigation property. What that will mean is I can use a spec to go and query. So I have this tenant subscription by subscription spec, right? So this expects a tenant ID because I've got a tenant ID coming in. But in this case, I don't have one, right? Um, so it does mean I could potentially change up, but anyway, let's not do that. Um, this is assuming the tenant subscription um, by tenant and subscription identifier spec. Yes, these are wordy, but I want them to be right this second. And this is going to be a tenant subscription. And this is going to be an I single. Now, I know that I'm on the unit test. I know I'm trying to build the unit test out. However, what I'm trying to do here is validate um, uh, this idea to see if I'm, yeah. See how it's trying to help me? So this is GUID tenant identifier, GUID subscription identifier. So what I want to do is I want to query dot include tenant as dot where s goes to s dot tenant dot id identifier id yeah, that's what I want to write. That's quite the name. That even allowed on Twitch? Interesting. Well, thank you for the follow. I hope. And a name that gives me trepidation. So what I'm going to do here is allow myself to pass in the GUIDs of both things so I don't have to go and query the tenant. Um, it's amazing when you start to think about a little bit more about the single responsibility, how much it can change how you organize the code. Um, and once I've started embracing that, I kind of like it to the point where I really try and focus on it. Because my alternative here would be to say, okay, well, I need a tenant repository as well injected into here so that for the GUID that I've got, I can go and look up the tenant and then use it that way. Whereas if I just make the navigation property, I can just go and get the associated records. So it'll just join on that. Martin, thank you for the follow. Welcome in. Hello. How you doing? So it's going to return this, and it's arg. And now the problem is I can't test these things. Tenant subscription by tenant and subscriptions identifier spec. Right, I can't validate those. They're not testable in that form, which is a little bit troublesome. Returns new tenant subscription. Tenant ID is that, and subscription identifier is subscription identifier, right? And we need to inject the repository now at this point. So let's do that of tenant subscription. So if I wanted to go and find the tenant first, I would have had to inject two repositories here, which, depending on who you listen to, is bad design. Just make that pass. So if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to join in. If you want to learn more about the project, you're welcome to ask questions. I will show the design and things as we go anyway. But you know, it's the stream is as much about me showing what I'm doing than it is as it is me programming. So that being said, if you like the background noise of me programming, that is okay too. I do not. To make people feel uncomfortable there. They need to be private as well, just to make that. So this is failing because you know it expected to receive a call and it didn't do. Um, private. Private. Again, these access specifiers do not make a difference to the unit test. As far as I'm aware, they don't create any sort of memory issues or problems there. It's just they are, you know, used only internally. So let's go and make this pass now. Right. So we've got the test structure. Let's go and make it pass. So var subscription equals repository dot repository, sorry, dot first or default async new. We use our super long one, and this is going to take command dot tenant identifier, comma command dot subscription identifier, and pass our cancellation token forward. If subscription is not null, right? Repository dot delete async. To make all these async now. Hey Gilgamesh, yeah, it's a mediator that I'm using. So I'm using them for commands and queries, etc. Right now, I'm not doing anything with this, so it doesn't matter what I return. It's not over, not equals. Yeah, so it's not null. I'm just saying it's not equal to null. Yeah, it's just a bit of a cleaner way of reading that. So if the subscription is not null, then we delete it. I believe fine usages. No, I don't want to do that one. How do I do? How am I going to get to his iRepository base? Go to. How do I do that? Go to implementation. No, that's not what I want. Go to implementation. Repository base. This is his repository base. Yeah, delete async. Okay, so by calling delete, I will call save changes. That's part of his spec. That is an interesting thing to know about, by the way, because it's kind of a side effect. If you wrap everything in a transaction, everything's fine. But if you were to go and do several things against the database without a transaction, you could end up committing to the database before you intend, right? So this will call save changes, which will, you know, commit to the database, which is so it's worth understanding when you do this, right? Um, can run our unit tests, and they both pass. So we validate that we called delete. Now we get to run the full stack and validate that that runs just fine. So I just so happen to have, I think I do. Why did I create that program? Uh-oh. Kafka Builder. There we go. New window. This is going to be an interesting one. I don't know if we've. So again, because I don't want to have to run up. Um, I don't want to have to check out the code and build control tower just to be able to go in and delete a tenant. There's a lot of moving pieces there. There's a lot of overlap. We need to spend some time going through the integration of that. But to start up all that and do that is just not something I want to do. So what I'm going to do is we've kind of been tinkering with a tool to do this. I'm going to make it deal with the delete scenario right now. So I'm going to make it call the delete and post it to the endpoint so that we see if this gets gone straight away. Um, so thus mimicking the Kafka event occurring. So what do I want to do? I want to first look at how I do a delete. This tool might actually have to become more full-fledged. We might need to spend a bit more time building out the tool to be able to effectively test events. What if it deletes the DB? What if what deletes the DB? If me using this tool deletes the database, then my development skills are sorely lacking. Okay, so let's get. I wanted to be further along with this today, but I think it's worth finishing this out properly so that I don't leave it hanging. We were going to focus, and again, the stream title kind of said it on the YouTube part at least. We were going to focus on the ability to add uh, the user. Where are you? Oh, that's interesting. We got some interesting behavior going on. Oh, because the system's not right. Yeah, it is. There we go. Assigning a user to a task. Um, it just was taking its sweet time. So being able to go in here and assign the user to a task. So we may still get to some of that once this delete is done, but I just wanted to kind of get this tidied up so that it'll deal with the add and the delete and we can trust it. I just need to figure out what code difference there is in a delete. Should Control Tower work with this by now? I mean, um, in theory, yeah, we should be able to get Control Tower checked out and have it running. I think I want to spend a little bit more time going through that together, getting the integration, because it's a lot of things to move, right? But yeah, I mean, it should just work fine. So Kafka extensions, publishing, Kafka publisher. So in the case of a delete, right, what do? We don't give a body, right? So there's no value. So it should still just work if we just do set value serializer. So this is just generic, so that it doesn't do it. So tenant subscriptions, I want to pass the key. The key is that's a point. Hold on. Oh no. No, 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 no. It's fine. Um, what is that? So we get a subscription. Oh, we can't do a delete. I was a little bummed out last night knowing C# can't do F-Link. What is F-Link? Stateful computations of a data. So there's no C# implementation of the library. Framework and distributed processing engine for stateful computations of unbounded and bounded data streams. Flink has been designed to run in all common cluster environments. Well, I mean, that just means there's no people in that community that are C# or .NET developers. So no one's really wanted to pick up the challenge there, right? It's not that's not a C# specific problem. That's a no one has built that. Really? Mojo. Uh yeah. So yeah. Of course you go from a dark screen right to a bright screen. Yeah, it just means no one's really developed the connectors, I assume. Um Change data controls. Okay. Now, what use case? Dang it. So it's another Apache. It's another Kafka style. Gotcha. Works native with Java files, what I heard. A SQL, Python. Yeah, a lot of these tools are built in Java. Like Kafka is built using Java, C libraries. And it sounds like what I've built. Huh. Interesting. Um, Sorry, I just had a the subscription identifier is all I need. I don't need a tenant. The tenant ID is completely irrelevant. We have a design issue. Was he being a jerk, Taylor? Did he try and muscle in on your bed? We have a design issue. Subscription identifier is unique. So essentially, the key that comes in here can't be, it can't have the tenant, right? So delete tenant subscription here. This can only have that, right? The tenant is kind of implicit. Now we add it when we publish the event, but we can't have. There's only the key, which is only going to be this identifier, essentially. But that's actually enough. Oh, that's an interesting one. Yeah, we might have to have an identifier additional to the subscription identifier. So to create a subscription that represents a subscription. Um, I'm personally, I personally am at a loss on how to continue learning coding. Do you have any ideas, resources? Currently, I feel stuck making simple end-to-end architecture apps. I'd love to learn stuff like microservices, but I really don't know how to get started. For instance, when to split the systems and how to get systems interacting with each other. Um, how would I describe that? So you're very used to building web front end, data layer back end, saving to database, and that's kind of where you're stuck. Um, you could, I'm not suggesting going to this extent, but you can use things like um, RPC. You could use something like gRPC as something to call other services to trigger other processes. So you could experiment with when you update something in your server. If you go to, I'm going to describe it. I don't want to. I keep adding drawings in here, and I need to stop adding drawings in here because it just keeps cluttering, and I commit them, and then I have to go through and trim them. I can't use this as a stream version. Um, Start new Obsidian. Create new vault. Stream. Browse. Stream notes. Sorry, I'm going to create a folder. Stream notes. No. I'm having some fun with creating Obsidian projects. Um, make SkyDraw, install, enable, close that. There you go. Memory serves. This is going to go straight into light mode. Obsidian's free, yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure this doesn't go uh, all super bright when I open a drawing. I think it will do new drawing. Yeah, it will do that. Dark mode. Okay. So, Martin, I mean, if you have your normal API backend, and I'm not going to draw my database. Oh, does it? Right. you feel you are stuck in this pattern or roughly this pattern. Right. Yeah, so what we do for Liquid Sky, by the way, Chandu, is we actually, this is all committed as a repo, so we can actually check it out and look. So if I have it on other devices, I can still pull it as a repo. Yeah. And considering the tool, considering what it gives you, I think, you know, if you're using these sorts of tools extensively, then thinking about some money is probably not a bad thing. Um, this development must be quite brutal. So Martin, you could play around with calling external services here, having them do things. You could integrate things like SignalR for push notifications to clients. One of the things um, I'd pay if it was open source. Um, you could push to services. You could use technologies, um, um, you know, gRPC. You could use Kafka. You could use ServiceBus. I use Mass Transit and RabbitMQ. When you know you need to do these things instead of one app to do it all. Generally, if you're doing too much on any single call, you probably want to look at options for disconnecting that. If you are um, like for me, the driver behind this design architecture overview, right? Um, the driving design here was I wanted to build a system that would allow me to extend with ease, change with ease. So I can change out an individual technology. I can change out if something's better stored one way over another. I can do that. Um, if you can't move your code anywhere else, um, you know, it's hard to see because um, monolith just grows, right? You start writing code, you want to add in. So someone says, I need this new feature. Okay, well that's when I add a planning item, I want to tell this user um, that something happened. Well, let's add it to a queue, right? So you build a queue table and you start a background process running, right? You could do it something like that. What I would do is now, with hindsight, given the flexibility of the technology, I'd say, okay, well then I'll push to a queue, right? Um, so when you come up against a new feature, a new addition to the system, ask yourself, can it be done in the existing code without creating maintenance nightmares? Should it be done in the existing code? Can it be done elsewhere? Um, what options do you have? Right? You know, you're as a day job, there's no way I get to do this, right? Without significant investment, right? This has taken 14 months to get to this point. I mean, admittedly, that's 14 months of, 2 hours before work and weekends and evenings. Um, so it's not 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, but it's still taking its sweet time. And to prove this out, to see this vision, it's taking its sweet time. So I would start smaller. I would start with offloading things that you do to services that don't need to be run at the same time. If you have um, one example, actually, I have a solid example here. So I have, and this is actually a need. I track my games library, right? Um, right. So I have a collection of games. I have a collection of video games, and the app looks like this, right? And I'm gonna try and keep the window smaller because it's not. If you're not interested in hearing this, please just let me know. It's we can get back to what I was doing.
Um, this is going to be bright white. So yeah. So this is my games library. I can track my games. I can list my games. I can see how much the games are costing, right? There's the ability to go in and um, so uh, there's the ability to go in and add a pricing file, right? But it's a very manual process. I want to do that. So this app follows very much along this line, right? It's a very simple, um, just build it, track it, do it, right? And apparently it's not working either, which is awesome. Yeah, there we go. So I can list through the games, I can go through, I can search the games, I can do all those sorts of things, but it's very, very linear in terms of what it's doing. What I want to do is I want to automate that pricing update, right? I want to say on 7 days, I want to go out and start that. So maybe I experiment with, you know, um, running a service, learning about how I would trigger a service every 7 days and have it update the database. What does that mean? What does it mean to have your code split out over somewhere else? And doing that. Basically just build out like that. So it's funny. This is one of the projects that's on my list of I really, really, really want to get back into because I want to build some more features. There's things in here that I'd like to, I see a game. These are the top 3 games for every platform with their current value estimated based upon their condition and what price charting says they're currently selling for. So apparently, Ridge Racer on the PlayStation 1 is going for about $206 complete in box. I have no idea why. Right. So, yeah. So you don't have to start with a massive distributed system. You can build services. You know, I might build um, when I add a game, um, queue up a pricing so the pricing can happen in the back end and I don't have to mess around with that and it'll add it to a queue of things that need to be dealt with. I could do reach out and gather more information. So there's other APIs, right? There's IGDB, which is the Internet Game Database, which I can go and reach out and gather more information for the game. I could search that and store that somewhere else. So I have a local copy, you know. I'm not drawing the database. I'm not drawing the database in a different DB. And it's experiment, play with extra pieces. You just do them, and there's no right or wrong answer. There's no one. If you're playing with your own, if you're playing with stuff in your spare time, doing something is is. I'll lose all my windows now. Um, Perfectly acceptable. So that's what I'd recommend. So coming back to this, Mojo. Yeah, and if you want, jump in the Discord. You're more than welcome to share projects in there, ask for ideas or opinions. I'm always happy to do that. Um, we do hang out in Discord. Um, that's happening more and more recently, which has been nice. But if nothing else, you're more than welcome to share your ideas and thoughts in the Discord and chat about things. Mr. Jones, after a noon, how are you doing? Okay. This is a design issue. Um, it's not unsolvable. Unsolvable. I think it's I think it's okay. It's just something we need to consider. Fighting Docker on your work laptop, you will lose. So the problem here is we can only have subscription identifier, right? So this changes uh tenant subscription by subscription identifier spec. Let's be consistent. Um, this goes away and this goes away, right? And technically that needs to go away. And that goes there. That needs to be removed. It's like trying to make a brew without a kettle. Water in both hands tied behind your back and tied to a tree. That's quite the vivid imagery. Uh, I use for development of this, I use Docker extensively. There's scripts that are used to start up all the pieces and all the backing pieces. So SQL Server, Redis, RabbitMQ, Mongo, Consul, you know, Kafka. They're all hosted in Docker. Um, yeah. So I don't know whether that's a good thing or not. So ultimately, let's change these unit tests. So this doesn't go there now. That just goes there. Right. So these should still function, but these have little bearing on this. Right. So I'm still gonna keep the tenant ID because that's what I expect. Oh, and with a PHP manual for sustenance, you'll be a well kept. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. So in here now, this can't do this. This just does this. That's fine. All fine. All fine. So we probably just need to review what we expect when we call delete. Um, tenant subscription, because ultimately we're passing the tenant and the subscription identifier, but when we delete, we only have one identifier. Whether we need to pass in more detail or whether we need an identifier that identifies that pairing module, we'll go over that. Async, await. So we're going to do that, right? And now let's start up. So because this is again, this is why we're doing it this way, right? We're not building the end subscription. We're identifying the flaws with the design as we go. We're able to change it, move these things around. There's no cost, but implementing these things puts the structure in place, and we can start building around it. Yeah. Again, with any code base you work in, the most important thing is that you are happy to change it and you're not scared of changing it. Could you cache it? I'm not sure which piece, Tempest. In this instance, the problem lies in over here. We've created a record. Well, it's not about caching it. It's more about how we identify the pairing, right? So we've created a record that has a tenant ID and a subscription ID, right? Now, if you're not familiar with my terminology here, each one of these databases, the record will have an ID field. It'll have an integer auto incrementing ID, but there's an identifier. So the source of truth of anything is the creator of that identifier. That identifier is then passed around the system. So if I say identifier, I generally mean the identifier used by the rest of the system to identify this object. So when we create the subscription, a record is published. Yeah, it's a unique token that identifies that thing. It's generated by the source system, the single source of truth, and used to identify that thing throughout the rest of the application. Sorry, I heard something I didn't expect to hear. But anyway, so in this instance, we have two pieces of information captured in control tower. We have a subscription identifier and a tenant identifier. So when we insert a record, those two pieces of information are stored. The problem is we have no identifier showing those pairings. So we don't publish an identifier, a subscription identifier, and a tenant identifier. We publish just a subscription identifier and a tenant identifier. When we delete it, we delete via that subscription identifier, which means that when we get over here, we only have that. So the tenant is kind of inferred by this. So it's a bit of a weird pairing and not as logical as we might like. So we might have to do Yeah. Yes. So we might need an identifier to identify the pairing of those two pieces of information. So yeah. But it's a design decision we can review and make. And that's why subscription right now is just a record. It's just a, are you subscribed? Yes, you are. Okay, we're good. So to make this work, what I need to do is I need to take this. I need to go to here. I need to do grid.parse, right? And in theory, I should just be able to do that and publish the Liquid Sky tenant subscriptions. So let's go and look. Let's go and put a breakpoint here. Let's see if we get there. If we go to um, localhost 8080, let's see, do we have Liquid Sky tenant subscriptions? That says we don't have messages, but that says we have messages 39 seconds ago. Okay, we still have a tenant subscription there, so it's not like that's. I'm wondering if this knows how to necessarily represent delete. I don't think there's anything explicitly different in the identity of pipelines rebalancing. View has no lag. Didn't find the associated module. You should work. That's running. Right. So what I'm looking for, yeah, 14 seconds ago. There we go. Null and null. It says there's no lag, but these aren't getting hit. And yeah, they are definitely running. Tenant. So there's the view receivers. That's this one. Did I remember to wire it up? It's always possible. Add Kafka, tenant subscription receiver. No, I remember to wire it up. So that's definitely something to do with it. Did not find the associated module for the breakpoint. Let's stop and run. Let's stop and rebuild and make sure. We actually might end up testing the, oh, we tried to delete something we don't have case straight away here, right? Because it's going to receive these. So let's go to the consumer groups. Let's go and reset. For some reason, it thinks that that does not have those two messages. Yeah, man. Save. Those all get stacked in the same window, by the way. This will get slower eventually. There you go. So we've set the lag to 2. So when this starts up now, this should receive that event. Nope, it's still saying it's not. Oh, no, looks like it's healthier. So I suppose I need to, on the YouTube side, make the title change that. So the video title matches exactly what I did. I don't want to make sure, I don't want to misrepresent that. So what should be happening here, and I'm not sure why, it says it's integrated them. Still there. Right, I'm not in the wrong database here. So how does it pull those messages and not hit my breakpoint? Let's have a look. Let's look at something that also gets deleted. So we have delete panning item. So delete panning item. Interesting. Really? Oh, requirement. Delete requirement. Not requirements receiver has to delete. So it does the same thing, right? There's nothing special about that configuration for the delete, right? There's no extra pieces required. It just deals with, oh, I've got requirements receiver. That receiver can deal with delete. In delete here, it just is the same thing, right? So you see that identifier. That's what we're going to end up with. We're going to end up with a, oh, by the way, you're deleting the identifier. We can make the key more complicated. It's just it's going to take a so right now everything's based around a GUID key, but that is going to be a significant rework of the system if we want to deal with that scenario. The problem I'm having here is it says it processed these, but nothing happened. So let's go in here and make sure we have a breakpoint. Let's go back and reset that again. And we can just start this receiver. We don't have to start everything up. Let's go back to consumer groups. And it's this sort of stuff that is going to make people dislike things like Kafka. Because this is a significant effort to figure out the quirks, I suppose. Liquid Sky tenant subscriptions for subscription integration event. Okay, so it's bound, it's fine. And again, the offset changed, right? So I don't think I've got any naming problems here. There you go. So that's done. So we have lag. So the view integrator. Tenant subscription event, subscription integration event. It's this being wired up. So the library that I've created for Kafka says, okay, well, I've got this event. If I look up my listing console for this type, do I have this? Do I have this key? Right. So that's what gives it this topic. That's what it subscribes to. So when it starts up, it subscribes to that topic based upon that name. It's a little optimization that I made because it gets messy keeping track of all the tenant subscriptions, keeping track of all the topics and everything like that. Okay, so let's start just our view receiver. Let's see if we hit this breakpoint. Null message could not be deserialized. There we go. We are getting a failure. So it tries to process them and moves on. That's why it's failing, right? So how do we produce a null when we do a delete? So that comes down to, and as always, if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing here, please feel free. Join in, ask questions. I do not have to achieve. We have delete requirement. Delete is going to be a delete here, which is going to, what is that going to do? How does that work? That deletes, but that triggers something because I have a requirement deleted subscription. On delete, requirement deleted, planning engagement. So on delete, it will publish an event that has these two pieces of information. It'll publish this event with these two pieces of information from this record before it actually deletes. So there's an interceptor. Foundation, shared kernel, interceptors, entity deleted. So as we are saving changes, this one will intercept. It will check the change tracker for things being deleted. It will get that custom attribute. It will build the domain event off there. It will get those properties off that object before it actually calls delete. So then it will continue on with what it's doing. So it's publishing the event, publishing the domain event, which will end up ultimately in an outbox, which then Kafka picks up. So publish integration here, publish delete async. The problem is the way I'm representing the message. That's the thing. And I thought that by opening here, oh, null serializer. That's what I need. I need a null serializer. Well, that's the problem. That's the problem. So I need this null serializer. Yeah, we are starting to get to the point of needing potentially a better, a more diverse tool here. Rambling Geek, how do you like building tools? Okay, so we should have a third message in that now. Let's see what that looks like. Ah, you see, that looks identical to me. That looks exactly like the same thing. So, oh, maybe we have a problem here with the way this is built. So all this does is uses a null serializer. Timestamp is fine, and it produces that to that topic. So if we start that again, does that still complain about the next one? What? I have no idea. I have no idea. Apparently, there's a difference in the way that data is stored. Null is not null. Okay, so let's see if we can find by our subscription identifier. oh, cannot create a DB set for tenant subscription because this. Okay, so we don't have. The problem there is in our update context, which is in view infrastructure context, update DB context, we do not have tenant subscription. So we need public DB set, tenant subscription, tenant subscriptions. That should be in our view domain entities, tenant subscription. There it is. Okay, so I just missed adding it into here because we hadn't changed this yet. Now that will probably have moved on because it does commit, I think, pretty early. Yeah, it does. Mr. Jones, thank you for stopping by. Thank you for hanging out. Appreciate it. Have a great day. May your one-to-one go well. So let's just drop another message in here. So apparently there is a difference in that. So we'll probably end up with a support library here to support different tools, maybe a command line or whatever. Okay, so if we hit F10 now, we just did that just go away or did that? The problem I found with Kafka is I like it, but then there's and it's once it's working, it works. It will plow through messages. You have that resilience. But when you're developing, it can become very flaky, and you've got to keep checking whether you let's add another one in there. Let's run that again. Yeah, it's not ideal. Um, that being said, when it is running, you know, things are nice. I think that's failing. View services. Oh, it is. It is. It is. It is. It is. That was actually erroring. I think I've got an issue with the object. This is a configuration problem, but one of the things I need to look at is as we go forward is like building out a useful and meaningful monitoring and hold on. I made it a big int. I don't think we're gonna have don't think we're gonna end up with um 4 billion subscriptions in there. I think that would be a really awesome problem to have. We're going to index on subscription identifier because we're going to be looking up by that. So we really want to get to that fast. What packages do you use for unit tests? I've used mock xunit, but the way you write tests looks a lot nicer. I use xunit. This is a few different things. Some of this is my opinion. Well, a lot of this is my opinion, if I'm being honest, right? So, we have an empty test. That's awesome. Later, module. See you later. So there's a few things. I like to have my arrange and act done outside of the facts so that the fact is just identifying what I'm testing. Um, I don't use the word should because it either is or it isn't. So my tests are always kind of like the affirmative, like task is updated with associated sprint, not task should be updated with associated sprint. And so some of it comes down to my naming style. This arrange act pattern, this style came from I was watching Cian um, um, he built his tests in a similar way, and I liked the idea of having the arrange of the test and then the act that we're doing as separate components, so that the actual facts are just the facts. Because normally you'll see arrange, act, assert in tests, and I think that that makes it kind of difficult to understand what you're actually validating. It does mean that there's some quirks to the test. So this arrange act is just a simple class that I create that sits underneath and everything, and it will on construct it will call arrange and act for you. So as it runs the test, it will call these. It doesn't like doing this, by the way. I think that will stop it complaining in some respects. But yeah, it doesn't like calling virtual member calls. I think that doesn't like that because yeah, because it's sealed, you can't extend from it. So it doesn't like this, but it's still valid. Um, so yeah, that's the only difference. There's not any extra packages. The package I use, by the way, for mocking, when MockQ had that issue with the whole suggested payments and things like that, and the integration with external things, I dropped MockQ immediately and replaced it with nsubstitute, which I actually prefer because I like the fact that I end up with something that looks like the repository. It doesn't. This is a mocking library, right? These are mocks. These are not real things. Um, but yeah, my audio is totally busted. So yeah, um, but yeah, that's why the unit tests are the way they are. Again, if you want to discuss more of this stuff offline, if you want to go into Discord, I'm more than happy to share the the code specifics. The code for Liquid Sky is not open source. The idea is that this is a product, therefore it will be closed source, and it will be usable. Um, yeah, I need to modify that. So I want to complete the stream on a success so that I can move on tomorrow. And tomorrow we'll tackle the tasks, adding the users to the tasks. Should famous last words. I need to create a video on time management. I have an idea of a video. Tenant subscriptions. This should be int, right? I think that's also. I think tenants is actually an integer as well. Yeah, it is. There's no way I'm going to hit 4 billion um, tenants or 4 billion subscriptions. And if that happens, then there'll be plenty of money to pay for the development effort and the migration. So I think we'll be fine with that one. So the reason that is necessary is because now I need to let's copy that out, drop that table, let's open this, scripts, view, tenant subscriptions, run, refresh. There you go. Tenant subscriptions. Add a record. One. Paste. Save that. There we go. Now let's run that once more. Let's see if we can end the stream on a success. Okay, we have a view. Let's run this to create the delete. Basically what's happening there is every time I'm pulling that message out, I'm actually committing to Kafka to say, yeah, I got this. A way of dealing with that for resiliency, because obviously if this fails, it just goes away and I never get the message, right? A way of dealing with this for resiliency is actually to create an inbox. And I will be doing that in the coming weeks, creating an inbox. So as that message comes in, it doesn't get immediately processed out into the system. It gets dealt with there. So the receiver here, I'm not going to change that. I'm going to put an inbox in front of that. So the receiver is still part of that, and there's an inbox for the consumer. So the receiver is then handled that way. So the code, it will be completely transparent, but it will require some modification to the receiver to deal with the, you know, commit back to the database. So that should run. We get to subscription. There we go. So we now have a tenant subscription. And now, after all that, we have no subscription. Ta-da! We have a success. So a lot of that was caused by misconfiguration on my side, not actual code. All that effort was caused by having to manually inject that Kafka event for delete. Means that I didn't actually put it in a format that Kafka understood how to consume. It was trying to consume the word null. It wasn't specifying it as it should have been. Also, then the table was configured incorrectly, so that was causing an error. And over time, what I want to do is I want to go over and do an open telemetry pass across the application and kind of strategize what sort of information is useful, how do I bring it out of the system, and who do I present it to, because it's going to have an impact. So yeah. Okay, so let's see if I can get audio. I should be hearing. Let's just go to that right now. Right, maybe. Yes, okay. Okay, so we're going to call it here. This is working. We are able to move forward. Again, if you want to talk more, the Discord is available in the cards below. It is Wednesday. One Lion streams on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, unless that's going to change. His stream is a .NET developer. Streams his work project. Thank you, One Lion. And it's a really great place to go and hang out if you're interested in .NET development, if you're interested in talking with other smart people. There's other developers that don't attend this stream that go in there. So but the community as a whole is just an awesome place to be. But today, we're going to raid over to Maybe, because we haven't been to Maybe for a few weeks. So let's go raid Maybe. Maybe is a developer, works in React and other tools. He's been trying to pick up Unity a little bit as well, so might be a bit random, but nice chill place to go and hang out. And yeah, so I will be back tomorrow. We will be working on assigning users to tasks, and yeah, that should be it. So have a great rest of your day, all. Take care. Thank you very much, and I'll see you later.